better topic to hit on, honestly, than reflecting on God's faithfulness, over this past year? Where do you end a year, other than reflecting back and looking forward and being thankful for all that God has done? Because, we look at Radiant Fellowship, this August will be 20 years that we've been going. And it's been a fantastic journey, a fantastic steps to where God's leading us. And I know like the Sioux Wetlands and the Skogs and even the Viles, they've been around quite a while. And some of you have been around a long time as well. I know you guys are coming up on 8 years, maybe, maybe 9, or I don't know, 10 years. Okay. So that's really good. And Smiths, they came in about 2009, 10, something like that. But, the fact is we've all come in at different times of the church history, and so thankful for that. And so it's good to look back. We've done a lot over the years. We've have a reputation in town, a good reputation in town. And we're a church that serves, we give back. And, even back when we first got going here, Strawberry Fest down in downtown Wapaka, they wanted a kids area, and they didn't have really a kids area. And so it was a time when we could get our hands on free inflatables for kids to use. And so we approached the Chamber of Commerce and said we'd be willing to run with the kids stuff. And originally I was asked if we would sell things, hot dogs and burgers and stuff. I said, no, that's not going to be who we are as a church. We're going to give back to the community. And so in the back parking lot, in the old parking lot behind the library, we had a bounce house, an obstacle course, a massive slide, and all of those things. And that was the start of us always giving back to our community and what we do, and really not asking for anything, trusting God's going to take care of us, and just be a light to our community, and a place of hope, and a place where people can hear the gospel message. And that's who we've been. That's who we've stuck with. That's what we've stuck with. And, it's one of those things, any pastor, you can ask any pastor, and at some point or another, they think that eventually they're going to pastor a mega church. I promise you, every pastor has thought that, it's so that there's pastoring, but there's also this is their vocation. This is their calling in life. And so you always think way down the road. But you also get to realize that, God has other plans than just mega churches. And as I've gotten older, I say, praise the Lord to that. Okay. Because you need a local congregation. You need the local congregations in town to have that family feel, to have those moments where you can be together and truly know one another. And for some, big church is what they want and what they need. And I get that. I grew up in a big church. It was fantastic. My pastor is still my friend. And the two pastors are still my friend to this day. And they did a fantastic job. But then there's the dynamic of a smaller church. When you step into a smaller church, if you're afraid of people, you're going to get really scared. Okay. Because you can't just sneak in the lobby and then sit in the back pew when every pew is a front row seat. That's just how it goes in a smaller church. And so you get to know each other on a more personal basis. You get involved in men's ministry, you get involved in women's ministry, you get you do fellowship events like our recent Valentine banquet, or you serve alongside one another at our Easter egg hunt, or whatever we do, you get to know one another. And I'm really thankful for that, because we do have a tight-knit family, and and we lean on one another. We get vulnerable with one another, and we let each other know where we're at. And, because sometimes it's easy in a church to wear a facade, when in fact, God wants us to be transparent. He wants us to have that relationship with one another, to be able to say, we're a family of Christ. So as we gather for this meeting today, I want to take a moment to reflect on God's faithfulness. And there's a couple points that I want to share, and it's an opportunity to celebrate who we are and what we've done and what God is doing in this place. The first thing we are caused to do is to reflect on God's faithfulness. If you're at the end of the year and you're looking at your family, you're looking at a business, whatever it is, if you're a Christian, you got to look back and say, thank you, God, for your faithfulness in these areas. Lamentations chapter 3, 22 through 23 says, because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. We have to acknowledge the many ways that God has been faithful to us. Could I go immediately to the giving thing? Sure. But there's so much more to that in a church than the giving thing. It's giving of your time. It's being there for one another, supporting one another, praying with one another. It's fellowshipping with one another. It's being out in the parking lot, grilling up hot dogs for kids that could care less about anything than to get eggs, but at the end of the day, we invite them to church. We get to know them. And, some things don't come back for a long time. And you'll hear me talk about our kids program doubled in size this year that we started downstairs on Wednesday nights. And what's interesting about that is the kids that are in it were kids in my youth group when I first started here. Isn't that interesting? That people know this place is stable and they entrust their kids into this program because they want their kids to experience what they experienced back when they were just youth. In fact, two kids that are in there, their mom was an 11-year-old in my youth group when I first started here. She was a very mature 11-year-old, so that's why she got in before 12. And her mom was a cop, and I didn't want to risk anything. So it was one of those things. But then these two kids brought all their cousins, and literally within 2 weeks, our kids group doubled in size. And again, this family I've known since I've lived here. And it's just neat to see how God brings things around. And I think longevity in ministry is a key. I think us being stable as a church is key, that people know we're not going anywhere. And so we need to celebrate the milestones that we've reached as a church. There's been a lot of lives touched. There's been people that I've led to the Lord, that we've led to the Lord. There's been many things that we can celebrate. And it reminds us that we serve a faithful God who continues to guide us. We work with what we have. We do what we can. And God's faithful. He provides every time. And then we look back and we say we're stewarding our resources. You're nudging somebody. I knew he was going to go there. No, it's not what you think. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10 says, each of you use whatever gift you have to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. So some of you have the gift of hospitality. And you volunteered and said, I'll be on your crew to make meals for the bands. That's awesome for our concert outreaches. Some of you have said, I can help out whatever way you need with fixing the building, getting things done. Dennis helps out a lot. Dave helps out a lot. Most recently, we wrangled in John as well for the hot water heater. And that was amazing to watch because the drain valve was so corroded, it wasn't draining water. And you got to do that to change the electric heating element. So he loosened it up enough to where he just yanked it out. It started glubbing water and jammed the new one back in, cranked it shut, and we're good to go. So the floor got cleaned at the same time. But, it just means that, each of us have a gift. We really do. Some it's encouragement. Others it's just being able to, it's the ministry of presence, of being there for people. Whatever that gift is, it is what makes a church unique. For a church to hang its hat, and I can say this honestly after 20 years, to hang its hat strictly to say we're good stewards of our resources and hang our hat on just the financial aspect, it's a big no-no. All right. There's a lot of other ways we steward our resources, and that is through everyone's faithfulness. There is the element of giving, sure. In the Assemblies of God, there is no mothership. Okay, so each Assembly of God, and there's two phases to an Assembly of God church, and we started off as a district council church. Okay, so that means you have just a couple people attending your church. You need more oversight. You don't have a board, so they step in and they say, we'll help you govern it, but you're your own church. Then it moves into a point where you do have your own board. You do have your own membership. We call it partnership, and you step into that role. And that's where we're at. So all funding is cut off. We're sustaining ourselves here. And I know there's other denominations that, they get funded through different areas. But at the same time, there's a lot of freedom in how we do this. And a majority of Assembly of God churches operate this way. Okay, we're affiliated with them. And we subscribe to the same doctrine and theological statements. But we are an autonomous church. And so I'm thankful that we have the support we need to continue on. There is that other side of the stewardship side, that as we review what our resources are, We ensure that we're using them to fulfill our mission, to make disciples, a support ministry, to do initiatives and impact our community. And this is our opportunity to assess how we can do better, be better stewards of the gifts we've been entrusted. Again, is it just the financial side of it? Not necessarily. When I make a statement that says this is our opportunity to assess how we can be better stewards, it's saying, I would like to know what everybody's giftings are. And if you want to get plugged in even more, or maybe if you're looking to get plugged into something, would love to know what your giftings are, because that is part of stewarding the blessings in this church, of what we have. But then there's also the part of looking forward to the future. Proverbs chapter 29, verse 18 says, where there is no revelation, where there's no vision, people cast off restraint, but blessed is the one who heeds wisdom's instruction. Vision is essential for our growth and mission as a church. If I would just go in each Sunday and be like, I don't know what I'm going to talk on, that's trouble, all right? The way my timeline works, and I realize that this is not the most theologically deep, but it's a business meeting message. But the way I go into each week is by Tuesday, I have a rough draft of where I want to go on Sunday. Okay. I know what I want to talk on and all of that. Now, that's not to say I don't leave any room for the Holy Spirit. There's been moments where on Friday night, I just felt the urging to flip the message and go in a different direction. And then what I do is I just put that sermon that I just worked on the back burner into the archives, and maybe it'll pop up sometime. That's something most pastors do. They archive their sermons, and I have mine going all the way back to possibly my youth pastor days in Milwaukee. And some of them I look back on, I'm like, what were you talking about? It's just change. It's just how change goes. But it's essential for us to look to the future and to talk about such things. And so I look at a week and I say, I want to be in tune with you. And so by Tuesday, rough draft's done. By Thursday, it's in its finalization phase. And I just leave it open on my desktop. And just, if I think of an illustration or something I read, or I hung out at a Valentine's party and I just drew a good sermon illustration from that, whatever the case may be, I'll write it down. I say that in jest. I said, whatever happens at Pizza Ranch stays at Pizza Ranch. So, I write it down and I start forming it. But in the long term too, I like to hear what people are going through. I like to hear what's happening in the church and hear stories. And sometimes God will speak to a person saying, you know what, there's a lot of people dealing with this. Let's go in that direction with the message. Now, beyond that, it takes a church to have vision, to stir things up and say, this is what we're going to do this year. This is a outreach we're going to look at. So we do some things that we've always done: Easter egg hunt, candy carnival, concerts, things like that. But this year we saw a really unique opportunity and jumped on it. That was that prayer pop-up shop, which Dora helped out a lot with, and my kids and my wife and Wayne and others. Now, was it a big pizzazz thing that a church would say we had hundreds of people saved and all that? No. But you know what? When we shared that image of what we were doing, in Wapaka terms, that thing went viral. And we had people that came in and spent time talking with some of our people that were there and prayed with them. And we planted a seed. That's all we can ask. That's all we can ask, is that God would just bless that endeavor. And that was one of those moments of Pastor Bob just saying, walking by on 4th of July, seeing a sign saying pop-up shop for rent, and me not giving it much forethought, saying, we're doing this. We're going to rent it. We're going to go for it. That's kind of who I am. And, and to take an opportunity and run with it. But all of us as a corporate body, when we see a need, let's talk about it. Let's talk about where God's maybe taking this. I can tell you right now, Bruce and I are talking about a program for mental health. And that's work that we're working through for the recovery community that would happen here at church two times a week. Because he has a heart for it. He certainly has the knowledge base for it. And so we're working through that right now. I can tell you that Bob and Carmen, they had an inkling to start a small group at their home. And so we're working through that right now to get that going at their house. But all it takes is to have a conversation, to sit down with me and say, can we talk about the potential of this? Most of the time it's going to happen. There may be moments where it's like, I'm not sure that would fit, but that would usually circle around a theology thing, saying, I'm not sure if that is something we want to pursue or just what the case may be. But as we reflect on God's faithfulness, we need to evaluate all of these things in the life of a church and constantly seeking God for a renewed sense of purpose as we step into the new year. I eagerly anticipate what God's going to do. I already got some ideas. I got things on the calendar that I'll share with you in due time for ways we can continue to serve our community. One thing we did years and years ago, which was actually a big hit, but you got to be a person willing to engage in conversation, is to sit out on the library square with a table and just says free bottles of water. And we just pack coolers on a hot summer day full of cold waters and we just give them out. It's amazing the conversations you have. You would think most people would walk by and just say, yeah, sure, I'll take one. But there are major walls and barriers up when people walk by. You want a free bottle of water? They may tell you to go somewhere. Okay. They may say, nope, I don't want what you're selling. And it's literally a free bottle of water. And the thing is that they don't know who we are, but they make assumptions based on other people that might be proselytizing on the square. Okay. And so it's literally, it's like a social experiment. We literally just want to give out a bottle of water. That's all we're there for. But it oftentimes turns into, what is this about? That's the on-ramp. Okay, we're just Radiant Fellowship up here on 420 North Harrison Street, wanting to give back to our community. Sometimes it ends there. Then the next question is, why? Okay, that's an on-ramp to conversation. So a lot of times it's just, hey, thanks, bottle of water, they're on their way. Most of the time, though, people are looking for people to talk to. And so that's going to be happening this summer down on the square, that will be partaking in that. And maybe have a few stations up. How cool to have set up one down on the square on a hot day. How cool to set one up down in South Park. And set up a bottle of water and a table with bottles of water. And as people are going to the beach, give out bottles of water for free. How cheap is that, and what an impact it makes? So different ways that we can do things. Now there's one more way. These are classifications, are what's called servant evangelism projects. Okay. And servant evangelism projects, you can actually Google it and find what that exactly means. But I can tell you is that it's simply showing the love of Christ in a tangible way. So one of the other things I'm working on is I kind of know the owner of the Minnow Bucket. James took archery lessons there many years ago and did pretty good too. But what we're looking at doing is, as soon as I hear back from the DNR, I heard about this down in Illinois happening, and I'm thinking, we have the chain of lakes. This could be a really cool thing. But for the DNR to give us clearance, and they gave us clearance once before. I don't know if anybody of us remembers when we hosted a bass tournament here in town. We hosted it was called the Radiant Anglers. We had a men's group of fishermen that went out once a month just fishing, all of our boats and kayaks, and we went out fishing. So we hosted a bass tournament, and the prize was $1,000 for the largest bass. And we had doctors, we had people, everybody enrolling in this thing, but we had to get clearance by the DNR. And so the DNR, they said, yeah, go for it. Here's the stipulations. Clearwater Harbor let us use their dock because it ended earlier in the morning before they got going. And the Fishers of Men fishing circuit, there's a Christian fishing circuit called Fishers of Men. They came with their weigh-in stuff, and we hosted a fishing tournament. And it was easy to work with the DNR. Now back up to the previous conversation of servant evangelism, I'm currently pursuing, can we set up a table on Otter Drive boat launch and give out free containers of worms to the fishermen? Doesn't that sound crazy? It sounds so simple, and all of that. But who wouldn't like to just pull up and be like, thank you? Because, if you can work with somebody who gets them at wholesale, or maybe even can donate because it's so out of the box, and you just sit at a table and give out, containers of worms, that's something they're going to talk about all day. That's something people remember. So those are fresh ways that we're constantly looking to serve in our community while keeping going with the concerts and the Easter egg hunt and candy carnival and all of these things. Now, internally, we're also wanting to do things and continue to grow in that through fellowship events, through bringing in, I would like to see actually, bring in a Christian author once in a while or a guest speaker on different topics. So it's always something that we look forward to the new year and say, let's go for it. I'm excited. I hope you're excited for it because God continues to do some really cool things with our church here in this community. I'm thankful for it. And I'm thankful that we can continue to grow and thrive as a result of it. So